Hi guys, this is actually my first time speaking in a mic, so this is exciting. Please tell me if it's too loud or too low, and then I will try to adjust. I am from DesignIt, which is a strategic design firm. We do a lot of different things. We do digital design. We also do brand design, which is basically the reason why I'm here today. We do a lot of strategy within both product design, service design, brand design. And then, of course, we also do education and other stuff such as that. But this is our main thing that we do every day. And then just a little bit about me. I am one of the few people at DesignIt who has actually been studying at CBS, which is maybe the reason why I'm called a business designer. I'm still not sure what that is, but for me it is doing strategy, both within branding, but also of course within product and service design. I have a background within branding as well. I've been heading off the strategic department in a brand agency called Co+. And then I was nominated as Berlingske Business Talent 100 in 2017, where they gave me the title Translates Creativity into Business. And then I thought maybe I should work a bit more with that, because maybe that's what I'm really good at. So I started out at DesignIt as business designer. And then, of course, the PreSeed Academy, which is what I've been up to for the past couple of months, creating together with PreSeed. And I'll come back to that one. So when I was asked to speak today, I thought that I needed to know, like, how can I really frame branding and its importance? And I'm not that much into startup, but I did know a few things. But what I first needed to go into depth with was what really creates a startup success, which this pretty science also says. So I thought that I might want to look into a couple of books. How many of you read at least 3 of these books? Yes, at least half of you, right? So this is just some of the go-to books when you want to be successful as a startup. And I thought, okay, I read a couple of them, but still, maybe I should try to find, a different approach to this. So I went to 2 times Bill. And you don't need to understand what this actually means, but what I started out with was watching Inside Bill's Brain. How many of you saw that one? That is actually almost everyone. I found out by watching these 4 episodes that he couldn't really learn me anything in these episodes about what he's really good at, as like starting up Microsoft and that story, and it wasn't really that. It was more about his new ventures, right? So I thought, like, this is not the place for me to go in order to figure out how to frame this speech. But he did learn me something, not as a founder maybe, but as an investor, because what Bill actually invested in was 4 seasons hotels. He did that together with the Prince of Saudi Arabia, Al-Walid bin Talal. And he actually paid together with him 3.8 billion. So I thought that was pretty interesting to look into, like, why did he pay so much money for that? Like, it's a hotel chain. And so I thought about, maybe it's the property. Maybe it has amazing property and he really want to use that property for something. And then I looked into 4 Seasons and I found out that 4 Seasons don't own any property at all. They rent it. So that wasn't the story. Then I looked into the staff and I thought maybe they just have an amazing staff there. And then I thought, no, man, the staff is always replaceable. You can always get a new staff. He can hire the staff. That would be cheaper. Then I thought about the restaurants. They have pretty good restaurants as well. Was that it? Not really. You can also copy that pretty fast. But then I of course, looked into the brand experience, because 4 Seasons really have a very great brain experience, and they have had that since 1961. What you can expect when you arrive is a nice hotel room. It's always tidy, and you can trust the quality. You also know that there will be nice, different sort of products when you go to the bathroom, and there'll be fresh food, coffee in the restaurants, and you can even bring an airplane. So they have a lot figured out, and they have been good at creating this luxury experience, and they have been very conscious about how they do that. So I thought that must be the reason. But it is a brand that has a story back to 1961. And I know for a startup, 60 years, that's a lot, right? So how can we make sure that you as a startup can create some brain equity a little bit faster? So I thought that I needed to go to the second Bill. Maybe he can learn me something I didn't learn from this specific case. Did anyone see his TED speak? TED Talk? Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's not bad. Bill Gross, he founded Idea Lab 15 years ago, and he actually managed to found 100 different companies. And what he found was that he wanted to know what makes a great startup success. So he looked into 5 different factors and tried to quantify what makes a great success. So he actually tried to measure how startups has become successes. And he found 5 factors that was relevant. First of all, it was funding. However, he found that funding maybe wasn't that interesting because usually you get the most intensive funding when you're already a success as a startup. The other one was the business model. And he actually said in that TED Talk that the business model is not that interesting at first, because if you don't get traction from the market, from your audience, then the business model isn't that important, because you need to figure out whether or not you can earn money from the audience because they're interested in your products before making the business model. So that wasn't that interesting either. Then there was the idea. He was surprised that idea wasn't ranked higher, but that is of course because of the team, because of the team's ability to actually execute the idea, to make it fly, and also to communicate what the idea is all about. And then of course there was timing, and that was actually his point, that timing was the most important thing when he did this research. He found that timing is everything in multiple cases when he did a comparison between Airbnb and Uber, and then some of his brands that didn't succeed. So first of all, Uber, he believed that Uber had a very good case because they managed to tap into a market need that was there for drivers, but also for us as taxi driver users. Which I think we can all relate to, because we really miss it here in Copenhagen as well, most of us. And then there are Airbnb, of course. That was really good timing, because it was also a point where we went from being very private and not willing to open up our homes to go into a phase where we recognize other people and become more sharing. Airbnb tapped directly into the sharing economy. So that was a very good starting point for them as well, and they had their timing with them. Then I wanted to show you an example with less of a good timing. Hopefully soon. There it is. Google Glass. How many know Google Glass? All of you, yeah. So I think we can agree that they managed to do a pretty good advertising. They managed to do a pretty good PR as well. But what they didn't succeed with was actually thinking about, first of all, is this the right timing? Do people actually want to use these glasses? But a different thing that makes me talk about the next subject is they didn't manage to tell us the story about why we should use these stupid glasses, right? So why should I wear them? How do they work? Where should I use them? all of those questions were not really communicated because the ad was simply a girl wearing a couple of glasses in a weird setting where she's outside with a wind jacket on, and then it just said glass. So, okay, I didn't really get that, and that's probably why they didn't succeed. How many know this guy? Also all of you. Yeah, but he's also a very great inspiration for me as well, and he is, I think, to all people who is involved with startups. Because what he talks about is that when you start a company, think about why. Think about the purpose of why you start the company, and not so much about what you do and how you do it. And Simon here is also very relevant for branding, because figuring out what that purpose is also relevant for your audience. So hence I thought that I would actually add this one. That is actually one book that is very crucial, I think, to actually look into. Because what is the true purpose and why should I believe in it? It's not just saying, yeah, but you can just, and why don't you get it? The reason why we exist is to do this. Yes, but if you don't manage to communicate it in a very simple way, then people won't get it anyway. And also you need to think about how you actually brand that why. It's not only about communicating why, it's also about wrapping it into a brand experience that tells the story indirectly as well. So it's not always easy. And that makes me talk more about the brand story. The brand story is important. But usually when we talk about brand stories with clients, they're like, yeah, but we don't have a lot of long history and we don't know how to explain that. And maybe you can help write our brand history. And I was like, it's not about the brand history. It's a brand narrative that explains who you are in a different way. Not what you have done and when you were founded and why you were founded that specific day because the sun hit the star and back again and all that. It's not about that because we don't care as consumers. I don't care why you were founded, to be honest. I care about your purpose and what that purpose means to me. So it can be a lot of things, but what is important is not that you tell a story, but that you invite us into the story. That we actually become a part of your story. And it's maybe a little abstract, like what does that even mean? But it could be like for us to understand the vision and also live a vision. Like, do we have the same purpose as the brain, for example? Most of you are probably familiar with purpose branding. How many have heard that term? Yeah. So that is, of course, being a brand with a purpose that is higher than just the product we sell. And that also taps into this. Like, do we do something besides selling a product that is interesting for the customer to buy into? It could also be that we can help them overcome a challenge. It can be a small challenge, it can be a big challenge, but finding a way to articulating that is also very relevant. We can also act as a guide, helping them through something, helping them navigate the world. A lot of new apps has done that, right? They have tried to find ways to help people navigate both their budgets, their bank services, their pension even. I will come back to that. But that is the purpose behind a lot of different brands, and a lot of different brands also succeed in explaining that very simple, even though it's very often complex messages. So going back to this one, that was kind of the split. And then I thought, 5 factors, but where is branding? Branding should, of course, be the 6th factor because it is very relevant for all of the rest of the 5 factors. Without branding, you can't really succeed in any of the other factors. Let me try to explain that. Ask yourself this question: is the idea anchored in a story that appeals to the audience? So you maybe have a great idea, but do you actually manage to wrap it in to a story, to a brand universe that appeals to the customer you want to talk to? The team. Can the team actually articulate what you're doing in a very simple appealing and catchy way? Do they understand how to say your message in a very simple way? That is also something branding can help you with, because as soon as you have those tools in place, then you can actually share that message also inside the organization. Even though it's a little team, then it's still important that you go, say the same, tell the same story. And then, of course, there's the funding. Do investors actually buy into that idea if it's not having a story? I don't believe it. I believe they buy into your story more than your product. They buy more into your brand than they buy into the product itself. I think Mads just admitted that sometimes they even invest in brands or in companies that haven't launched a product yet, but they fell in love with the brand. Is that okay to say that? Is that fair? More or less. And the business plan, of course. The business case. Yeah. And then, of course, there's the business model that I just talked about previously. And a brand can actually also help lead the business model, figuring out how to scope the business model in the right direction. Figuring out if this is our story, is that then the right direction to go in? Can this brand carry our corporate strategy? Are we in the right direction if we want to be true to what brand story we started out by creating? And then, of course, there's the timing. It would be very sad if you actually had a very good timing, but you didn't succeed to get your message across and tell it in a simple way so that the audience actually understood that this timing was very good and that the product yourself is actually pretty relevant for them right now and here. So, my point here is that it is actually an option to start out with branding, because branding is guiding your company. So, how many read this one? Not a lot, not a lot. 10 maybe. Then you should read that one as well, because prototyping is actually what I believe is also something that can be done with branding. When you do prototyping, you don't think about if you can build it, but you think about whether or not people will be interested in what you're building. You're not thinking about whether it can be, whether or not you can make it fast or not. You're thinking about if people are willing to pay for it. How can you figure that out if you're starting out with creating a great product? I think it's way easier to figure it out if you start with a good brand. Because if you launch a brand without a product, you will still know whether or not people will be interested in buying it. Therefore, I think that there will be something called brand prototyping. It's not something they talk about that much in the book. However, I think it's something they should talk about. Usually they're focusing on doing prototypes on different products by making it out of cardboard boxes and so forth, and see if people will actually buy it anyway. Grandhood, how many knows Grandhood? A lot, that's good. Grandhood was a great example on this, because Grandhood is a pension fund that wanted to do a mobile-first brand and rethink how we think about pension. They would also want to rethink the way we do pension and also the way we go to pension, actually, or we go to retirement. So they had a very big vision. They also had an algorithm that could do all of this, but it wasn't created yet, but they wanted to see whether or not it worked out for them. So we made a brand together with them called Grandhood. And I want to get back to the case where I'm going to go a little bit more in depth with what was the strategy behind that and how did we succeed in actually getting some traction from the market. But first, I think it could be so interesting to know a bit more about your knowledge about branding. So, a little true false. I'll check Hopefully I can see if you are on the right track or not. I don't have any pens with me, but Asger, you will help out, see if people are on the right track. So, false, you'll point in the right direction. True, you'll point in the left direction. First, brands are basically logos. True or false? Oh my God. Why are you even here? I don't get it. Of course, logos are just a single part of the entire brand system. It's actually a tiny part of the entire brand system. Here is a task we did on Nykredit. We did the brand refresh, rethinking all the different elements that needs to be in place when you build a brand identity. So we have, of course, the logo, the typography, the imagery, colors, icons, brand canvas, diagrams, super graphics, and things such as that. And as you can see, everything somehow needs to be aesthetically aligned, but also strategically aligned, which I believe is even more important. I'll get back to that. Branding and advertising is not the same thing. True or false? Don't do groupthink. Don't do groupthink. Okay, true. That is true. Branding is the DNA and the identity that you have as a company. Advertising, on the other hand, is taking those DNA prints, you could say, to an advertising, to a campaign, to something you put out in the world on a shared platform in a way. So it is two very different things. Advertising is, of course, also related to marketing, but branding is your DNA. You can see Spotify. They actually just did a refresh on their brand here. But what we can still see is some heritage from their old logo. They have the bookmark, which is the little icon to the left, and then they have the word mark. Those two things haven't changed, but they can still change some of the coloring because we can still recognize Spotify. They also did some change in the way they grade or treat pictures. But when you look here, you can see that in the advertising, you can still familiarize with Spotify. However, this is also a way of showcasing you the difference between smaller things in the DNA and then when everything is gathered into an advertisement. There's only one way to build a brand. True or false? False, false. Yeah. Are you all agreeing? Beautiful. Building a brand is, of course, all about context. Meaning that you can build a brand in 100 different ways. It doesn't matter, actually. But one thing we recommend at DesignIt is having a frame for building a brand by going through a process that is loose but still within a framework. So what we always do is that we start out by the strategy. It's important to figure out your why, as we just talked about. Why do you exist as a brand? What values are you offering to the market? How do you communicate that in a simple way? And also just what you do and who you are. Explaining who you are can actually be a pretty difficult thing. And that is why you have a strategic phase to go into depth with all of those things, but also getting insights about your customers and what they actually want. And then, of course, there's the design phase. So you take the synthesis from the strategy phase and then you translate it into some kind of visual design, but also verbal, of course. You both need your verbal communication and your visual communication to be in line with the strategy you laid out. And then, of course, finally, there will be the outputs. You will gather everything to one holistic brand experience, one holistic brand identity. Offering a perfect product will not guarantee our company's success. That is true. You are all agreeing. These are too easy. Okay, That is, of course, true. Without a brand, I believe your product is irrelevant. I have an example. Inside this tube is the most wonderful cream. This cream removes all wrinkles at both men and women. And it's so amazing, but the world hadn't heard about it. They don't know what's inside this specific tube. Then there's this brand. How many know The Ordinary? The ladies know The Ordinary. And you should, because it's actually a very, very good brand, and it's also a very good brand message they put out there. Because what they did was actually to touch upon how they are an abnormal beauty company. Because what they do is that they take the essence of what's good in a cream, and then they put it in a cream and spend less money on doing fancy packaging. Also here, clinical formulations with integrity. They just succeeded in somehow branding what's so unique about them. So even though the previous tube was exactly the same content as this one, this has become a huge brand. It's from Canada. Now it is distributed to the entire world, and females love it. And if you haven't tried it, girls, it is really good. If you are not a brand, you are a commodity. True. Some say false. Some say false. I want to know afterwards. I want to know why you say false. My reason for putting true on this one is because every product or service is imitable. You can copy every product or service. What's unique, on the other hand, is the brand you wrap around that product or service and what people identify that with. This is a banana. Banana. You can buy this for 2 crowns. And then there's Chiquita. You can buy that for 3 crowns. And even though you as a customer go shop for bananas and maybe are a bit price sensitive, then you still go pick Chiquita in most cases. People go in most cases and pick out Chiquita. Maybe they did it more in the 80s, but people are still doing that because they believe that Chiquita is higher quality, they are familiar with that specific brand, and it's a nice feeling they familiarize with this. So they can actually charge more for just putting a sticker on a banana. That must be the most generic product of all, right? Bananas. Okay, do you know who this is? 1, 2, 3, who? Nike. Yes, it's Nike. If you got the chance to buy a pair of running shoes with no name, and then for the same price as a pair of Nikes, which one would you buy? 1, 2, 3, which one? Nikes. And that is, of course, because of this genius branding. Because they make you believe that when you put on a pair of Nikes, you can do everything. Just do it. You'll get the confidence. Just run, just run, just run. And there's so much more to tell about that brand than just that, of course. But still, you can suddenly identify with someone who is just I missed the English word. So I'll jump to the next slide. This is a sum up, and it's very boring because you did all of it right. We had a couple of disagreements, but we'll get back to that later, hopefully. How many of you have tried to get a brand proposal from an agency? Yeah, a bit. It is extremely difficult to figure out what is a good brand proposal, how much do I get out of this, is this priced the right way, how do I navigate this, can I be sure they actually deliver something that I want, what if I don't like it, all of that. So I figured that I wanted to make some sort of simple explanation of how it actually works when we do branding. So I made two axes. Quantity of outcome, the depth of the outcome, meaning the strategy, that we have the time to go in depth with what is the audience, what do they like, what insights do we have about the audience, and how can we appeal to them in the right way. And the quantity, meaning all the different brain artifacts, all the different brain assets, the advertisement, and so forth. That is the quantity of the outcome a brain agency can do. And then on the other one, you have time. And then you have a triangle. And of course, that is illustrating the volume on each of the axes. There is projects that are long, 8 to 12 weeks, sometimes even more, sometimes it could be half of a year. And when you have these sorts of long projects, it's also correlated with a lot of complexity in the company. Sometimes it's because, for example, it's a huge company, they have a lot of stakeholder management. We need to go through a lot of different people to check out whether or not this is the right direction. Maybe they have a very complex product that takes some time to get to familiarize with. It can also be that they are so they have troubles deciding whether the change is too big for them because they've been in the market for a long while, so they need to do some testing, so forth. So we need to adjust a project for that, and that is why sometimes these projects can last for a while. But also they will ultimately get a deeper outcome and more things done. Because if we get the chance to put out the right foundation, then it's easier to execute a lot of different things, a lot of different brain assets. Then there's brain projects that last around 6 weeks, which is pretty rapid. It could also be longer, a bit longer, maybe 8 weeks as well. But still, it's not. You can make it within that. And Grandhood was a brain we did at DesignIt that actually took us 6 weeks to create. And as you can see, you don't always have the time to make sure that this is what the customers always, what the customers want. But you get the chance to prototype it. So you get the chance to put it out there and test it. Where if you take the longer project, you really want to be sure before you put it out in the market. And then, of course, the PreSeed Academy that we just did in collaboration with PreSeed is only a 2-week process. It's so rapidly that you can't even get the chance to blink twice before it's over. It is extremely fast. And we do strategy for 1 week, and then we do the brain design in the other week. So that is very rapid, but you get a slider output maybe. You get, the first iteration on what is it actually we are about, and you get the chance to try to map out all the values and the core values of that, and then how are we then articulating that into something the customer understands. And then you get the chance to try to test it afterwards, and then you can see whether or not you should start grow on that brain platform. So with PreSeed, we had 4 companies at the same time at the DesignIt office doing brains within 2 weeks. One of them were Boon, and I can't find Peter, but Peter will talk more about this, so I won't go into depth with that outcome. But that was, but I want to show you some at least. This is actually what we could manage to do in such short time. We could make a new logo, even a bookmark that was in motion as well. We could come up with an intelligent way of telling the story about what we do. And we could even make some mock-ups and a fancy cap. And then there's Grandhood. Grandhood was the longer process. for 6 weeks. We did the brand strategy and we spent a lot of time on that as well. We spent a lot of time figuring out how do we turn this great vision of yours into something that the customers also understand. Grandhood started out by being called iRobo. How many of you who knows Grandhood knows that? 5. Okay, but that's fairly good actually. I'm surprised, to be honest. And Matt, you don't count. We built a story for them because we realized that the name iRobo is very rational. It relates to a robot that somehow calculates something for you as a customer, and it's very financial, it is very rational. So in relation to their vision, which was that they really wanted to change the market, they wanted to change the way we do pension today, it simply wasn't comprehensible, it wasn't enough. So we looked into the different stages in life because we wanted to give some more positive associations to what retirement actually is. Are you about to die when you go on pension or retirement? That it was somehow what we felt like when we started out with this, when we go to PFA and it looks tiring and it's not really appealing to a young person, and you're like, I need to do it because it's important, but do I even want to do it? Maybe I'm deaf when I get it. And there was just so many negative associations with that. So we looked into the childhood, the adulthood, which gets a little bit more boring and you start to really miss your childhood. Then you get to parenthood and then it gets even worse. And then finally, of course, we decided that it should be called retirement. And you don't start by, now I will finally get my pension. No, it should be called something with a lot more positive associations that could kind of embrace this new approach to what retirement and pension actually is about. So we created the name Grandhood because it's not only good, it's not great, but it's grand. And sometimes you're even a grandparent, right? So that seemed pretty fair to call it Grandhood. This was the video. Yeah. Wait. Yes. So we try to explain in a simple way by, this is very geeky, but the round circle in the G is of course trying to tell the story about how your life is a cycle. It's not a dead end when you go to retirement, but it is just beginning again, and you can do new stuff. You can even start a business when you're going on your retirement. You don't need to only go sailing and have a ball like they do it in the current pension pictures, right? Did a lot of different merch in that. It freezes on the stationery, yes. Of course, some skins for the app as well. Yeah, a little animation on the different sections in life, the different stages that are seamlessly connected anyway. Yeah, and here, of course, everything was delivered in a brain book that they can take to investors and so forth. And then, of course, there's the big one here, Nykredit, where, again, a lot of stakeholder management, a lot of different people that needed to align on whether or not that this was the right way to go. Also aligning on the smaller tweaks that was made in coloring, icons, imagery, everything. And this was some of the outcomes in that. That is, of course, there's several different ways to do a brain project. This was only a corporate visual identity. It was a refresh, so we didn't need to come up with the very heavy brain strategy on this one because they already got one, even though they got one, of course you still look into it, but it's not in the same degree as we do with, for example, Grandhood, that was a fresh brand, which also makes startups a lot more fun to work with, to be honest, because you can really do a difference. So this was just to show you the process we went through in the previous Brain Academy and talked to you about. It's 3 days with a gap day, so you have time to do regular work. And then there's also 3 days with designing the things. Of course, the design is more in our departure, but still it is co-creation in this format. So everything is about getting continuous feedback from the startup companies that are participating. We did a little short film that rapidly introduces what this concept is about and what the participants said about it. So I'll just play this.
So the Brand Academy is a place where you can go as a startup to actually reimagine the brand that you may have and make it more useful, more valuable than what you can come up with yourself.
A very great experience to revisit the core values, revisit the brand, revisit the strategy and align principles around all of that.
It was about focusing on the value that we truly create for our customers, what we enable them to do.
What's our narrative? What's our visual identity? Also, what is our corporate strategy?
The Brain Academy can help startups crystallize the brain experience at a very early stage.
We wanted to add more value earlier to the companies to see if a program like this could speed up their funding process.
I think the key takeaway for us was that we can simplify something that is very complex.
Of a brand concept, a brand system that we can actually use at various levels, so we can explain it more one thing at a time rather than one sentence that says it all.
The outcome of the Brain Academy is a stronger brain foundation, including ready-to-implement brain assets.
We definitely recommend the Brand Academy to any other startup out there who needs to rethink how they communicate strategically.
Yeah, this is almost, we're almost done. This is just the final thing I wanted to touch upon, because maybe now some of you are thinking, but are we ready to go ahead with branding? And then some of my colleagues, they said, why don't you make a decision tree that will make the decision way more easy? And then I thought, let's try it out. So I start by asking, do you have a business idea? If you don't have a business idea, I think you should start out with that, because otherwise it's pretty difficult to build a brand. If you do have a business idea, then my question is if you already launched a product. If the question is no, then it's okay, because you can go ahead and prototype your brain, figuring out whether people want your product or not through your brain experience, through your first iterations on a product dummy. If your answer is yes, then I wanted to ask if you already did some brain work. If you didn't do some brain work, I think you should have started by doing that yesterday, because it is really important to get ahead with your brain, of course. If your answer is yes, I wanted to ask you if it's better than your product. And if you ask yourself and the question is yes, then I think that is very, very good. And then you need to see if your brain continues to get traction. And if it's not, then I think you should try to revisit it, even though you believe that your brain is very good as it is. If the answer is no, then my question is, provocatively enough, do you like wasting time and money? If your answer to that question is no, then I think you should speed up and start creating a brand. And if your answer to this question is yes, then I would just say to you that I love doing that as well when I'm shopping. But in any other case, if you say yes, I think you should actually maybe thinking about going into a different business, doing something else, because branding is crucial. You should do your branding. You should get ahead. Don't be afraid. Just get it done. Be careful about it. Craft it in a proper way. Don't do shitty work. Thank you, and please join the Brand Academy.